Good morning, everybody. It's Sunday morning. Got my coffee, and I thought I'd go for a walk in my yard. As you can see, Steven, the lawn guy, came and took care of this for me. Although I think he bent his blade at some point because there's a giant streak right down the middle. But whatever. Yeah, it's I'm actually kind of surprised I'm awake. It's about 10 a.m. I know it's late for a lot of people, but Eric and I didn't get home until about 1:30 this morning. We were in Philadelphia last night at a place called the Convent, and we were seeing my friend Jon Padgett perform. Well, there's two performances. He read Thomas Ligotti's The Bungalow House with musical accompaniment by Chris Bazone. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he also did a performance of his short story 20 Simple Steps to Ventriloquism, which was incredible. I mean, it was great performances all around, but 20 Simple Steps was amazing. Something you need to know about Jon is that he's also what he calls a lapsed ventriloquist, so he hasn't practiced in a long time. But God, he was able to do this effect with his voice that it got deeper and more gravelly and then almost distorted. I asked him about it after the show. There was like somebody running an effect or something through the microphone, and he said no, he can actually do that naturally. And I wish I was able to film it because it's something I would love to watch over and over again. Unfortunately, no recording was allowed. So yeah, we got to hang out with him for a couple of hours, and I got to give him a copy of the Devil's Creek ARC, and hoping he'll blurb that. No worries if he doesn't, though. And yeah, it was just a really cool event, and it was put on by Cadabra Records. They basically specialize in producing spoken word LPs, and they've done classic works by Lovecraft, Robert Chambers. Trying to remember some of the others they've done. They did some of Poe's stuff. Ligotti's probably the most modern author that they've done. I urge you to check them out because they do incredible work. They're not expensive, for an LP. I think the most I've spent on one was $35, and that's, they're well produced records. They have color variants. Artwork's incredible. If you're into that sort of thing, check them out. They're Cadabra Records. And yeah, so it was a cool event. Hanging out with Jon was cool. Jon, he wrote a collection called The Secret to Ventriloquism, which contains a story he read last night. It also has a novelette, maybe it's a novella, I'm not sure, called The Infusorium. And one of my all-time favorites, Escape to Thin Mountain, which you can also find on Pseudopod if you listen to podcasts. And yeah, it was just a cool event, and now here I am trying to wake up with my coffee and a mug by Greg Chapman. And so this past week was kind of a tough one. I don't know, it was kind of a bad mental health week all around. Just I have those sometimes. Hence the last video with me going for a walk and everything. And I'll probably be pacing up and down my yard. It's very long, as you can see. What was I saying? Right. Bad mental health. So, as some of you are aware, my agent has been shopping Devil's Creek, my small town cosmic horror novel. And she and I have kind of been going back and forth on the word count. I'm pretty steadfast in my resolve on that. Because most of the places, correction, just about every one of the places she shopped it to has come back and said it's too long. They would like to see another 20 to 30,000 words cut out of it. And I refuse to do that. So, it's entirely my choice. Ultimately, it's up to me, but, you know, it's led to a lot of soul searching, because when I sent her the book, and she was already representing me at this point, when I sent her the book, God, I really need to get back here. It's so overgrown. Look at this. So we put in this bed a couple of years ago, and it's slowly being taken over. There's a lot of overgrowth back here. Part of the problem is that we're allergic to the stuff that's growing back here. So it's kind of hard to put on long sleeves and jeans when it's 90 degrees and get back there to cut it all out. So, I don't know, we'll have to do it probably when it's a cooler day. So yeah, Devil's Creek word count. It's been a point of contention. And the original draft was 176,000 words, which is huge. But I set out to write a very long book. I wanted to write a long book. I needed to write a long book, I think. And the story ended up being really personal to me. And I think that's why I've kind of been more hands-on with it. More personal than most of my work, I think. For a lot of different reasons, primarily because it's based on the town I grew up in. It deals with a lot of the stigmas of being an outcast in that town, which I've got intimate experience with. Main character, it's about his relationship with his grandmother. And anyone who knows me knows that I was really, really close to my great-grandmother, who passed away about 14 years ago. Rest in peace, Granny. And yeah, I acquiesced and cut the book down. I guess initially it went from 176 to 146, and then when that still wasn't short enough for the big five, I put some things back into it that I didn't feel comfortable cutting, so it sits at 149. And yeah, we had shopped it to a publisher that it's kind of an indie press, but also published some pretty big names. I won't say who, but they ultimately passed on Thursday. And yeah, that was just not the news I was hoping for. I thought it would be a slam dunk. So that was a blow. It kind of honestly messed me up for a day or so. Kind of changed all my plans. I spent most of it just relaxing in bed on my phone, and that's what I have to do sometimes. I have to sit in the dark and let it, I don't know, it's like a fever almost. I kind of have to let it burn itself out. Usually that means me taking a nap or just sleeping it off in general. So that happened, and I fortunately have a pretty good support system. A lot of friends checked in with me, made sure I was okay. I made some decisions that night after I'd had time to clear my head. And so I reached out to a few publishers myself, my agent's aware, and seems like I've got some interest, so we'll see. It's a beautiful day out. Of course, it rained last night, so that's probably why. Yeah, that's, I hate to say it, but that's kind of how things go. Like, in publishing, nothing is certain. Not until ink is dry on the contract, anyway. And even then, there's still a possibility. It's not this romantic thing like I grew up believing it would be. It's not this instant fame and gratification sort of thing. It can take years. It's not like it was, 30, 40 years ago, in what I would call the golden age of horror. Stephen King got his start selling stories to magazines. Well, how many magazines do you know of that actually publish fiction? I mean, mainstream magazines that you can buy on every newsstand, that is. So it's very cutthroat. It is not kind. It doesn't care about the writer's feelings or the art, because it's a business. So, my experience is I'm constantly at odds with those two, because the art and the business as concepts don't really meld together. They're just forced to cohabitate. I love this tree. That's a rose bush that has been since bloomed. I want to landscape all of this so I don't have to mow it, anybody else to mow it, rather. My eventual plan is to have a walkway that comes all the way out, kind of curves around this shadow, and then goes right there to the doors. It's just easier to traverse in the snow that way. So that was kind of my week. It wasn't fun, but there were some positives to it. I got to see John last night. I got to hang out with my friend Tony and his brother Mike on Friday night at a drive-in that we go to every summer. And I may have some more freelance work coming down the pipeline to me, which is great, because my severance runs out in a month. And my insurance runs out at the end of end of June. So I'll take this moment to pimp my Patreon. Sorry. Patreon. My name's Todd Kiesling. It's Keisling. I started up a Patreon to help cover my medical expenses. I'm about a fifth of the way there for my first goal, which would cover out-of-pocket prescription costs for my wife and I. And you'll probably hear me talk a lot about that Patreon on these videos, which I'm still trying to figure out what they are. They're not all going to be me walking around my yard or down the street. But I kind of want to do something different as an author on YouTube as opposed to what a lot of other authors do. So, yeah, I'm hoping this week's a better week. Definitely have a lot of work to do on a project that I owe Bloodshot Books, and I need to get back to writing something new. or at least planning my next novel. Hopefully something the Big Five think is more acceptable in terms of word count, but whatever. I don't know. It's kind of hard to shake the feeling that you're trying to conform to the guidelines of a dying industry, or at least a dying institution anyway. More and more I think about it, I think independent presses will... Holy shit, there was a wasp that flew right up to my phone. But more and more I think about it, I think independent publishers probably end up taking over, or at least dominating specific genres, kind of like they have horror. But who knows? Then again, I guess there will always be a need for mass corporate publishing to a degree. Anyway, I'm waffling. I'm gonna go finish my coffee. Cheers, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your holiday weekend if you're in America. And if you're not in America, then I hope you just enjoy your Sunday. And I'll catch you guys later. Cheers.